Hey everyone, welcome to the TMS podcast. And today we are going to talk about real time database and AI native data plane. So today we have Tobie with us and CEO of SurrealDB. So welcome to the TMS podcast, Tobie. How are you?
Thank you, and thanks for the invite. Yeah, I'm doing great. At the end of KubeCon Europe, it's been a good week.
Yeah, and I'm also excited to have you here. And also super excited to talk about the database because my background is as well with the data, like from the data and the AI. So it's always interesting to talk about the data and what's going to happen in the data and AI field.
Yeah.
So Toby, before jumping into the data and AI, so can we talk about you a little bit
Okay, so um,
and your Oxford days as well?
yeah, so where SurrealDB was conceptualized
Yeah.
was while I was doing my thesis at Oxford. I was doing a master's in software engineering at Oxford University in the UK, and uh, I was focusing on my interest kind of lay in databases generally. So I'd used building lots of large scale data systems on top of different databases,
Yeah.
and my experience was, you needed a time series database, you needed a graph database, you need a document database, you need a relational database, you need some kind of key value database for caching, maybe. Like every single project needs all these
Yeah.
different types, but that has a lot of complexity, a lot of cost, a lot of maintenance, and then your application gets very complex as it has to talk
Right.
to all these different platforms. So while I was at Oxford, I was looking at uh, storage engine, so the distributed or a key value storage engine for specifically temporal graph. So I was really
Yeah.
interested in how graph databases
Okay.
or graph can be used to manage and store data. But then, importantly, how does time play an aspect in graph databases or graph data as a whole, in order to let's say store all that data over time, and also then to be able to query that data. And that is very similar to what humans do in our brains.
Right.
So that was kind of where we started. And then whilst doing my master's, I was like, look, there has to be a better solution than
Right.
all of these different tools that
So
people are
this is
using.
your first startup, and
Not my first
but
startup.
you have other
Not
one,
my first.
right?
It's definitely my first database startup.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Not my first startup, but it is the first venture capital backed.
Okay, I think higher right also your
Yeah, so
venture.
we had a number
Yeah.
of software as a service tools. We had one in the e-commerce space, one in recruiting. I think we did email marketing at some point as well. But yeah, we had a number of tools, and that was what uh, where these challenges, where we kind of found out about these challenges, because building those tools, it was just it was a lot of work to scale those.
Okay, so before like starting the serial TV, so of course you may have faced a lot of pain points with the database, and so before that, what database you were using, and what do you think? Okay, this is something missing, and I really wanted to create something better.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things, right? So the
Yeah.
first thing is, and I'll come on to the databases in a second, but the first thing is how databases were traditionally built and then deployed was something that I really wanted to try and improve. So,
Okay.
especially if you're working in a distributed system where
Yeah.
you want to ensure fault tolerance, high availability, databases are always focused on, yes, you can make that work, but you have to ensure that it's the same server that comes back up, and it's
Right.
this, the cluster data still exists. And if that node goes down and another one comes up in its place, that often causes problems. And so that's an important concept. Building a database that was designed for
Okay.
designed for the cloud, let's say, or for containers, and the way that we're now deploying applications, which is,
Mm-hmm.
if a container goes down, assume it comes back with no information. Assume
Mm-hmm.
it's a completely new node. The old node disappears and the new one comes back up. So a modern way of doing databases, I think,
Okay.
is the first approach. But also, I love databases,
Yeah.
right? Like, you can't go out there and say all these databases are awful. They're all solving a something unique. I have experience with MongoDB, with
Yeah.
RethinkDB, which obviously open source now and didn't succeed as a business, but great concept.
Mm-hmm.
OrientDB, which is now I think part of
Nice.
SAP maybe. That was a kind of document graph database that gave me a lot of
I
inspiration
mean,
for
you have
SurrealDB.
used a lot of databases. I'm hearing first time the last two one you mentioned.
Yeah, OrientDB, DynamoDB,
Yeah,
MySQL,
DynamoDB.
like all of
Yeah,
these. Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, I, I, I've always been interested in all of the different functionality that these databases can offer. The InfluxDB on the time series side as well. You know, like all of these are doing something amazing.
yeah.
But for us, the challenge was applications back then need to be able to talk to all of these different databases. They need
Right.
time series for analytics. They need graph for relationship and connection analysis. They need DynamoDB for maybe key value. You know, we were using it for the change sets of data over time. You know, like all these different databases are needed, but they all deploy in a different way. They're all hosted in a different way. They all have different fault
Right.
tolerance. They all have different designs in terms of how they are deployed and scaled. And then on the top of that, your application's having to talk with all these different databases that have different consistency guarantees as well. So that is why SurrealDB existed, or we
Wow.
wanted to.
I
And
mean,
now, fast forward today, it's even more relevant.
that's amazing. From using database to building a database is a huge, huge thing, right?
Uh, yeah.
So what do you think, like, what it takes to build an database? I mean, for me, learning a new database, because when you are in a data field, you have to learn different databases and the SQL languages that uh, the database support as well, right? Every DB has different syntax,
Yeah.
right? So what it takes to build that DB?
I mean, look, it's a good question. I think on top of just building a database, we've actually built our own query language that
Okay.
enables you to talk in all these different data models
Oh,
in one
okay.
language. So
Okay.
I think that's probably the hardest thing. You know,
Yeah,
like we've
yeah,
actually
yeah.
got a query language that is Turing complete.
So,
It,
so you have built that one query language?
Yeah, so
And
you can query the database through
okay,
SDKs
okay,
and MCP and all these different tools, but at the end of the day, the best functionality from the database comes through its own query language, and that is it's a Turing complete language. It has programming like aspects. It's SQL like, so it's very similar to
hmm,
traditional SQL.
yeah,
But then extends it with graph and with different concepts that you don't see. And, you know, so it brings concepts from time series databases. It brings concepts from something like MongoDB. It brings concepts from Postgres and MySQL, and enables you to work with data in a kind of myriad of different ways.
So are we okay to say this is one solution for every database, or
I mean, look, there are definitely things you shouldn't use SurrealDB for.
yeah,
You know, it's not a columnar analytical database, right?
hmm,
So even though you can store your data in object storage, you can scale to large amounts of data. It's transactional. It's you know,
okay,
predominantly transactional and ACID based. So you know, when you write to the database, that change is strongly consistent across the cluster, and when someone else reads directly afterwards, they will see that. So that's really important, because that strongly consistent nature, that transaction, goes across every data model, from vector search to full text search to graph to document to time series as well. So it's fully transactional. But then,
okay,
you know, so you shouldn't use it as a replacement for an analytical column store that sits on
okay,
top of Parquet, on top of
yeah,
S3.
yeah.
But yes, you know, uh, depending on the types of workloads you're doing, SurrealDB can be used
So
to
who can
replace.
use these SurrealDB, like as a student or as a developer, as we use the different database like Mongo, SQLite, or PostgreSQL? Can we also use that?
Yeah, I think it depends on what you're building, right?
Okay.
So, you know,
The best use case,
yeah.
what do
So
you
if you
think?
look back where we started, it was about
Yeah,
database consolidation. But if you look today,
yeah.
um, graph databases are no longer a niche type. They're not, you know,
Okay.
beforehand they were used as okay, we've got the data set, we want to analyze patterns within it. That's not what the biggest use of graph is today. Graph is now becoming this central piece of AI, let's call it context or AI memory. And it's used to re-rank or bring better relevance to data or context that's then pushed into an LLM.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest use case for SurrealDB. It's knowledge graphs. So being able
Knowledge graph.
to describe your organizational data and then be
Mm-hmm.
able to bring out the right data at massive
That's
size
nice.
in, you know, using graph, using vector, using full text search, and then bring that out into your LLM. And it's also agents. It's that unstructured knowledge graph. So being able to have an agent store data in whichever way it wants, and then to bring that out in graph form. Maybe you start with a vector search, you then proceed from those results through to a graph of connected data. and then you can bring out the right data, the most relevant data for
Right.
an LLM, and that in turn reduces the hallucination. It improves the confidence of the result coming out of an agent or an LLM.
So can you tell me more about, like, as we discussed about the AI agent and how it deals with the LLM as well. So can we more talk about how SurrealDB is using AI and
Yeah, so it's. I mean, look, you can query SurrealDB with natural language and things like that. So we use
okay.
AI in that way. But I think the more important thing is, we are working with organizations who
Hmm.
are in financial services and in defense and in large organizations or very specific deployments where getting, as the context, as the data increases in size, reducing down to 70% or 60% accuracy on the output of the LLM is not possible. And that's not something that they can,
Yeah.
that's not going to bring them success. These organizations, these deployments, if let's say it's mission critical in a
Hmm.
defense deployment, you need to be able to get to 96, 97, 98% accuracy, regardless of the data that is being stored in the database, regardless of how much that context
Yeah.
increases. But you can't just push the entire context into an LLM and expect it to give you the right results. So you have to
Right.
bring it the right relevance,
Right.
the relevant data, let's
Relevant
say.
data.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that's exactly it, right? And by combining, you know, a lot of people are building their AI agents right now on just vector search, let's say.
Right.
Postgres, so traditional relational data, and then vector search. And that gets you so far, right? You can do similarity search. But in the same way that a human brain does all these different types of thinking about data, that is what SurrealDB does. So we might think in our brain about, if you say a word to me,
Yeah.
I have, parts of my brain goes, okay, I'll find the exact match to
Exact
that
match,
word.
like similar to
Yeah.
like situation or something.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
it
Something.
maybe
Yeah.
exact match. So if you
Yeah.
say like bag to me, I'm going to
Uh,
think of a bag. But if I might also then use vector search to say, right, I'm thinking of rucksack and handbag and
yeah.
satchel, right? So then,
Yeah. Right.
but then it doesn't just stop there. It then goes to related things. I now think of things I've bought before, which
Hmm.
are bags. Products I've looked at in shops. Friends of mine who have bought those bags. So this is the context coming out of it. It's not just the first set of results. It's the human brain builds on those results
Right.
with graph, with relations, with connectivity, and then to go a step further than that, and this is where it becomes really interesting. Which of those events are no longer valid? I
Right.
bought a bag, but I took it back to the store. So I
Right.
still want to record the fact in my brain that I bought that bag, but I also need to now know that bag is no longer mine. I took it back. I returned it. So the LLM has to have the right context, and it has to now know that yes, I bought a bag, had an
Hmm.
interest in this bag, but I took it back. Maybe the quality wasn't good enough,
Yeah.
and that state over time changes. So the temporal aspect of that that connected data changes. So being able to combine these different models together enables you to get better relevance for the
Results.
data.
Yeah. That's great. Also, as you said, we need to feed the relevant data. I'm totally agree with that because not every data is a good data.
Yeah,
You have to first work on your data and then you can get the good
yeah,
results.
yeah.
That's totally right. So what do you think? So I know you must be seeing a lot of companies who's making a lot of different mistake. You can see, okay, this could be solved very easily. They are doing a very big job. So what do you think these companies are making that one mistake that they shouldn't do?
I think it comes down to, well, you've got two aspects, right?
Yeah.
But it's all to do with data. Obviously, I'm biased about the data. Look, we've got really good models, right?
Yeah.
We've got models that can do incredible things as long as the data is correct. And we're seeing bit by bit that the longer the context window, the more data, that accuracy drops. I hear all the time people saying, "Oh, yeah, we've got an agent, but I'm not sure of the result," or "I use this
Yeah.
thing on my phone, but I'm not sure of the accuracy of the
Right.
response." Um, for me, it has to be about data, right? Well, the talks that I give, the conferences, the meetups that I talk at. When you ask someone, they're building agents, you get a good show of hands. When you ask someone about building agents on vector search, you get a reasonably good show of hands.
Right.
When you start saying, right, vector search and full text search to improve that data, reduced. Then you add graph in. We're talking about a few people now out of a crowd of 100,
Yeah.
and you add time data into that. We're talking about one or two, maybe.
Okay.
So people are not using all of the tools at their disposal. And you can do this. You don't have to use SurrealDB. You can spin up 4 or 5 different databases
Right.
and store different data in all these different database platforms, as we were doing before we created SurrealDB.
Right.
And then pull data, retrieve data, filter data across those different platforms. It's harder, but you can do it. But that is that's the missing piece, I think, for AI. The GPUs are powerful and fast. The LLMs are incredible. And if you're doing a small project, the data that we're using works.
Right.
You can store it in a big prompt, right?
Yeah.
That works. It doesn't work when you're dealing with a terabyte of data, 2 terabytes, 10 terabytes, 100 terabytes, a petabyte of data. It doesn't work at that scale.
That's nice. I'm agree with that. And like there's what I can see, there's a lot of feature, right, that we are trying to build. But what's the biggest challenge you have faced?
I mean, you're running a startup, you face challenges all the time, right? I think the biggest challenge is, what we're building is a complex tool. From an engineering perspective, this isn't a tool that sits on top of other databases. We haven't used the Postgres engine and the graph database engine. We have built this from the very bottom up. So we built
Really from scratch?
From scratch.
No open source project?
So there are elements of the stuff that we've built that is open source.
Yeah.
And we use open source libraries in certain areas, but ultimately we built our own key-value store.
Okay.
We built our own distributed storage engine that scales on top of object storage. We've built our own database query engine. We've built our own query language.
Wow.
We've built the SDKs on top. That's a lot to build. That's a lot to build.
How much time it took to create this?
I mean, it's ongoing, right? Because we're constantly improving, constantly adding to it. But when we launched back in 2022 as an open source tool, and it took off on GitHub.
Yeah.
And
in a way, we didn't really. 3,000K something you mentioned in your bio.
I mean, so we're at 31, almost 32,000 stars now. But I think there was a day where we got 3,000 stars in a day.
Really? 3,000 star in a day?
Yeah. That was when it went crazy. I mean, we were listed as number one and number 2 on GitHub. What's the secret? I mean, there's an element of, I think we built an ambitious project, and people could see that.
Yeah.
And what you could do with it, people could see, look, this is pretty cool, what I can do with it. But I think, don't get me wrong, there's an element of luck as well, right? There's an element of being there at the right time. Maybe the use case was right at the right time, being seen by the right people. There's an element of that, but I would say that interest was still there because this is something which is saying, we're not just going out there and saying, we want to build this database, but make it 5% faster or make it 50% cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
We're going out there and saying, none of this works. If you really want to do incredible things with your data, and even more relevant today with AI, you have to rethink how that data is stored and queried.
Exactly. I'm so impressed by because I was seeing your LinkedIn description bio, and it was so great. I mean, we will discuss about it.
I don't even know what it says. I can't. That's probably very old. But
so, one thing is there's a lot of companies, a lot of developers. How do they know about? Okay, we should migrate to AI ready or AI native database. That's the time. Okay, we should migrate.
Yeah, I think the word AI ready, or it reminds me of TVs when they were HD ready, but they weren't. They didn't do HD at all, right?
Yeah.
Every database can be AI ready right now. You just say it's being used for AI. I think it's an important distinction. Yes, any database can be used for AI. Ultimately, at the end of the day, if you want to pull data out of a database and push it into an LLM, you're being used for AI. I think the difference is, and these are the conversations we have with our customers, which is, I'm doing this, I'm using 5 systems, and I still cannot guarantee or get anywhere close to the confidence that I need for the accuracy of the responses.
Yeah.
And that is, for us, that's the most important thing. How, at the end of the day, a database is a database. It's used to store, it's used to query. But in the world of AI, in the era of AI, it's about how do we get the most accurate information.
Yes.
Ultimately, we have brilliant compute processing right now. We've got GPUs and we've got models. That's brilliant compute processing.
Yeah.
And we have the ability to scale out massively. what we don't have a central brain.
Hmm.
We have not yet, as an industry, worked out, this is how the human mind works. This is how it queries data and works with data, and this is what we need to push in. I don't recall when you ask me a question, I don't recall every single piece of information I've ever received in my entire life.
Yeah.
And I also don't filter that in a single way, like with similarity of meaning. It works in a number of ways. It works with a number of different data types or ways of thinking about data, and that is, for me, what data plane in the AI era is going to need.
That's great. I'm totally agree with that. So, Toby, one more thing I wanted to ask: if you will get a chance to again build a data system, what's the one rule you will follow? Like, okay, this is something I will follow for sure.
So building a data system again, or an AI system.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
data,
Data and AI, like data system, but in the AI area,
yeah,
like AI era.
yeah. I think I would say SurrealDB is very well positioned for the AI era because of its ability to bring the querying needs that agents will need or do need already, but will need even more. I think again the biggest issue that people are starting to face, and the biggest issue that people are going to face over the next, I mean, things are moving so quickly, but let's say 3, 5, 10 years,
Yeah,
is going to be data. It's going to be
great.
access to that data. So that's the thing I would say. If I were building an AI company or an AI agent, let's say, or a set of agents, I have to make sure that my data is in a really good state. I'm not
Right.
just talking about taking structure from PDFs or taking structure from images and storing that. I'm saying once I've got all that data stored, how do I bring the most important data out? But if I was to build a data business again, a
Yeah,
database business, I would say, look, it's when we took off in the early days, it
yeah.
was amazing. We had this database, but we didn't have the connectivity to the ecosystem around it.
Okay.
Um, and that's fine. I mean, we started just me and my brother, just two of us, right? When we launched,
Oh,
so it was
wow.
very small. And you can't build everything, but I
Yeah,
think connectivity is incredibly important. So that's something we would focus more on earlier on, if you had the resources, so that we can connect with everything possible,
everything.
because that's what we're all competing against at the end of the
Yeah,
day.
if we can't, relate with
Yeah,
each other, then I don't think so
exactly.
that could fit into the system.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm also agree with that. In this era, it's not about just storing the data. It's just about, okay, what kind of data you have,
Yeah,
right? That's very
yeah,
important.
yeah.
Also, Toby, one life mantra or advice you want to share to our audience?
Okay, this is an unexpected question. I think, look, uh, from a well, first of all, we're obviously on, as every product is, as every business is on social media. I think the first thing is the online world can be very vitriolic. So the one quote I always try to live by is I think it's come from Socrates or Aristotle, which is, do not do to others that which angers you when done to you by others. So if you're going to go out there as your brand,
Mhm.
and you want to be respected as a brand as well, don't disrespect other people's brands. I think that's the first thing.
Right.
Um,
Oh my
and
God, that's a very good. This is nice.
so
Yeah.
that's probably the first thing. And then running a startup is hard.
Yeah.
You know, it's non-stop, constant work. I think sometimes you've got to step back, think, and just pause for a second, just to see, what you're doing.
Also, Toby, that is great advice I have ever heard, and I will try to follow that. I'm trying, but yeah, this
It's
is a great reminder.
it's hard, right? Because
Yeah.
you're in it every day. But yeah,
Yeah, this is a great reminder. Also, Toby, we are here at the KubeCon Europe, Amsterdam, and you are at the GTC as well, NVIDIA. So, what these conferences has impact on the startup success?
uh, I mean, from a perspective for SurrealDB, or generally. Really,
General.
okay. I think it goes without saying that right now a lot of the talk is about agents,
Mhm.
right? Agents and AI. With NVIDIA, rightly so, because it's NVIDIA's conference, you've got a big push on everything agents, everything AI. You come over to KubeCon, you've got a big emphasis on, okay, that's great. how do we actually deploy these agents at scale?
Right.
How do we work with the production, the deployment, the site reliability? There's a lot of that here as well. How do I ensure my databases? This is one of the things that we talk about with our customers. How do we ensure my database is up and running all the time? Because if I've got 1,000 agents working against a data set,
Right.
I need to ensure that it's always running. So I think it's important for, they're probably two of the most important conferences in the world in terms of tech, apart from the big hyperscaling cloud companies as well. So it's important to be here. But I think it's just, seeing how the narrative is changing and very quickly.
Right.
And yes, the NVIDIA conference is pushing more on the AI side, and this is still like, yes, but we still have to deploy this.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see that change, and it's probably a quicker change, of course, than any other change there was before. Like moving to the cloud was over multiple years. We're moving to agents incredibly quickly.
Right, right. Because this time also at KubeCon, it was all about the AI, and AI.
Exactly.
So it's great to see how things are changing, and I'm also very excited to see what's the new feature SurrealDB is going to release. But thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
this conversation. It was really great.
Thanks so much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And also, I'll see you in the next podcast. Thank you for watching us.